Welcome, restless souls, to Carmen's Crypt. I'm Carmen Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carmen's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carmen's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. You know, while I was researching this story about aviation anxiety, spiraling thoughts, and the illusion of control, I started noticing just how hard it is to stay focused when you're diving deep into subjects like fear, probability, and the human psyche. And that's actually when Magic Mind reached out to sponsor this episode. Honestly, I was skeptical at first, because I only share stuff with you guys that I genuinely believe in. But they sent me a few samples and said, only talk about it if it actually helps. And it did. I still had to do my research before deciding though. So what I discovered about Magic Mind after doing my homework is, well, apparently they use this cool thing called nano-encapsulation, which basically means the caffeine is time-released. You get the boost when you need it, and it fades out smooth instead of nosediving halfway through your day. How awesome is that? But what I really liked, it actually helps me calm down while I'm locked in on a script. Between the nootropics for mental clarity and the adaptogens that help regulate stress, I stopped bouncing between 15 tabs and a half-written sentence. It's like less spiraling, more storytelling. If you're curious, you can try it out for yourself. Magic Mind is giving 50% off with my link, magicmind.com/CarmenEDU, and the code Carmen50. Plus, they give you 100 days to try it risk-free, even if you finish the whole pack. I'll drop all that in the show notes for you. All right, ready to board a story about fear, fate, and the moment when the math stops working in your favor? Buckle up. This is Flight 98. Michael Donovan stared at the news alert on his cracked phone for the 5th time that hour. He couldn't stop scrolling through the details, each one lodging in his mind like shrapnel. American Airlines flight collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, resulting in a tragic loss of life. The mid-air crash is considered the first major commercial aviation disaster in the U.S. since 2009. The first in 14 years. The statistics professor from his college days would have called that an anomaly, an outlier. But Michael knew better. An end to a streak meant only one thing: regression to the mean. More crashes were coming. Probability demanded it. He tucked the phone away as his flight number was called, trying to calm the tremor in his hands. As the East Asia Operations Director for Creston Financial, Michael had taken 97 flights in the past 3 years, 97 rolls of the cosmic dice, 97 opportunities for probability to notice him. The odds improve with each incident, he thought desperately. Someone else's tragedy makes your flight safer. That's how probability works. But the equation felt hollow, a desperate man's rationalization. The night before, unable to sleep, he had found himself watching old episodes of The Twilight Zone, a mistake he had immediately regretted. The episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, had appeared in his recommendations, the one where William Shatner's character spots a creature tampering with the plane's wing, while other passengers see nothing. Michael had turned it off halfway through, heart racing as the fictional passenger's terror mirrored his own too perfectly. The image of Shatner's wide-eyed panic had stayed with him, reinforcing his own deepest fears. What if he saw something no one else could? What if he wasn't just anxious, but actually perceiving a danger others missed? The tiny white lorazepam pill sat in his palm, his pre-flight ritual for the past 11 years. He'd started flying regularly after meeting Lydia in Hong Kong during a business conference. Their long-distance courtship had required monthly trans-Pacific journeys, each one a lesson in controlled terror. Now, with 2 children and a senior position that demanded quarterly trips to Tokyo, the pills had become as essential as his passport. Michael swallowed the medication dry, mentally counting down the 30 minutes until its chemical calm would begin to dull his jagged edges. He moved mechanically through security, recalling the call with his wife and children that morning.
"Daddy, when are you coming home?"
6-year-old Waverly had asked, her auburn pigtails bouncing as she jumped on her bed during their video call. "Sunday night, sweetheart. Just 4 sleeps."
"Promise you won't crash?"
Her innocent question had frozen his blood.
"Waverly!"
Lydia had scolded, taking the phone.
"Don't say things like that."
But the damage was done. Even Waverly, in her innocent way, understood that flying meant danger.
"Michael, are you taking your medication?"
Lydia had asked later, when the children were out of earshot.
"I know the news about that collision has been everywhere."
"I'm fine," he had lied. "The statistics are still overwhelmingly in my favor." What he hadn't told her was how he had spent that previous night, not sleeping, but calculating and recalculating the odds, plotting aviation incidents on a timeline, searching for patterns in the chaos. In the small hours of the morning, he had convinced himself that the recent crash had actually improved his chances. Someone else had already drawn the short straw. But walking down the jetway now, the calculations provided no comfort. Each step toward the aircraft felt like moving deeper into a trap. Michael's fingertips dug into the leather armrest as the Boeing 787 shuddered through another pocket of turbulence. His wedding ring clinked against the plastic cup, sending ripples through what remained of his whiskey. The medication, the tiny white pill he had taken 30 minutes before boarding, was supposed to help. But the familiar tightness still claimed his chest, wrapping around his lungs like steel bands. "Sir, would you like another drink?" The flight attendant's smile was practiced, professional. Michael wondered if she could see the terror behind his eyes, if she'd been trained to spot passengers like him. "Please," he managed, handing over the empty cup with trembling fingers. "Double." He checked his phone. Still 5 hours to Tokyo. 5 hours suspended in this impossibly heavy metal tube, hurtling through near vacuum at 550 miles per hour. The business trip couldn't be avoided. The Tokyo branch needed someone senior, and his boss had been clear: overcome this fear or lose the promotion. The pills, the therapy, the meditation app his wife had downloaded, none of it touched the nauseating dread that surged through him with each announcement from the cockpit, each vibration beneath his feet. As Michael settled into his window seat, he performed his pre-flight ritual, one developed over 97 increasingly terrifying journeys. He checked that his seatbelt was secure. He located the nearest emergency exit, 5 rows ahead across the aisle. He tapped the window 3 times with his right index finger, a superstition he had developed after his 10th flight, when the panic had been so overwhelming he had nearly deplaned. That flight had landed safely, and Michael, desperate for patterns in chaos, had retroactively decided the window tapping had helped. He tapped again, 3 times, then once more for good measure. He thought about his father then, how the old man would have mocked this ritual, these pills, this fear. Leonard Donovan had been a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, shot down twice and walking away both times. "Some men aren't meant to fly, Mikey," he'd say, deep into his nightly whiskey. "But me, the sky owes me." His father had died at 56, not in a crash, but from a massive stroke on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Michael had been 20, home from college for the weekend. He had found his father slumped over the breakfast table, cornflakes soaking in milk and spilled orange juice, eyes fixed on nothing. The funeral was closed casket, his mother's decision. "I want you to remember him living," she had said. But sometimes, in his nightmares, Michael would see the casket open, would see his father's corpse turn and whisper, "Death noticed me, Mikey, and now it's noticed you." Across the aisle, a flight attendant arranged a blanket and pillow on an empty seat. "Is someone joining?" Michael asked, grateful for the distraction. The attendant looked confused, her smile faltering. "I'm sorry?" "The seat. You're setting it up for someone." Her eyes followed his gesture, then returned to his face. "Sir, I didn't touch that seat. It's been empty since takeoff." Michael stared at the neatly arranged blanket and pillow. "But I just watched you. Perhaps you should try to rest." Her smile returned, tighter now, professional concern creasing the corners of her eyes. "The medication can sometimes cause confusion." How did she know about the medication? He had taken it before boarding. She couldn't have seen him. She was probably referring to the alcohol, Michael told himself, pushing away the thought that he might be losing his grip on reality. When she left, Michael squeezed his eyes shut, counting his breaths the way his therapist had taught him. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. His heart continued to race, pulsing against his rib cage like something trapped. When he opened his eyes, a man sat in the previously empty seat. The stranger wore a crisp navy suit, his silvering hair immaculately combed. He stared straight ahead, hands folded in his lap, posture unnaturally perfect. "Excuse me," Michael whispered, leaning across the aisle. "When did you board?" The man didn't respond, didn't blink. "Sir!" Michael tried again, louder this time. Nothing. A child toddled down the aisle, followed by her mother. As they passed the suited man, neither acknowledged him. The mother's gaze met Michael's, her expression shifting to concern when she noticed his distress. The lorazepam, Michael thought, pressing his palm against his forehead. "It's just the medication." He reached for his phone, opening the camera app to ground himself in reality. In the frame, the seat across the aisle appeared empty. Michael's throat closed. He lowered the phone, and there sat the man, motionless and silent. "You're not real," Michael whispered. The man turned, an unnaturally smooth movement, like footage playing at half speed. His face was handsome, in a generic way, almost like an AI's attempt at creating a businessman. His eyes, though, his eyes were wrong. The irises were too large, the whites bloodshot in perfect symmetrical patterns. Lightning flashed outside the window, bathing the cabin in stark white light. For a split second, so brief Michael thought he might have imagined it, the man's face seemed to shift. His skin shifted impossibly tight across pronounced cheekbones, his too perfect smile widening to reveal teeth that appeared unnaturally sharp. The darkness returned, and the businessman's pleasant generic features were back in place. "I'm as real as the aircraft," the man said, his voice oddly modulated, as if coming through a filter. "But neither of us belongs here, Michael." The blood drained from Michael's face. "How do you know my name?" The man's lips curved into what approximated a smile. "I know everyone who flies too often, the ones who push their luck." Michael's mind raced to the American Airlines collision, to the shattered statistics, to the 97 flights he had taken in defiance of his deepest fears. "What are you talking about?" Michael's knuckles whitened around his armrest. "Probability," the man replied, running a manicured finger along the window beside him. "Do you know the odds of dying in a plane crash, Michael? 1 in 11 million. Excellent odds. But you've taken 97 flights in the past 3 years. The math changes when you tempt statistics." A violent tremor shook the plane. Overhead bins rattled. The seatbelt sign dinged on. No one else seemed alarmed. "You spent all night calculating, didn't you?" the man continued, his unnatural eyes fixed on Michael. "Trying to convince yourself that the American Airlines collision actually improved your odds. One tragedy makes the next less likely. That's what you told yourself." "How could you know that?" Michael whispered. "I know everything about probability, Michael. I exist at its edges, and I'm here to tell you that your calculations were wrong. Dead wrong." The man leaned slightly closer. "Disasters don't make other flights safer. They create weaknesses, faults in the system, cracks that spread." Another shake, harder this time. A woman across the cabin continued watching her movie, unbothered. A flight attendant calmly poured coffee. "You're not real," Michael repeated, louder now. "You're a hallucination. The medication doesn't cause hallucinations," the man finished. "Check the side effects if you don't believe me. Drowsiness, dizziness, no hallucinations." Michael fumbled for his phone again, pulling up the prescription information. The man was right. "Who are you?" Michael whispered. "I'm what waits at the end of probability, Michael. I'm what happens when luck runs out." Michael thought of his father, shot down twice in Vietnam and walking away, only to die at his breakfast table. Had probability caught up with him too? The plane dropped suddenly, violently. Michael's stomach lurched into his throat. A crack appeared in the window beside the man, a thin line that spiderwebbed outward. None of the other passengers reacted. "They can't feel it," the man explained calmly. "But you can, because you know, deep down, this is your flight, the 1 in 11 million. Michael lunged across the aisle, grabbing for the call button, for the flight attendant, for anyone. His hands passed through the seat as if it were smoke. The man remained, watching him with those wrong eyes. "The fuselage is compromised," the man continued conversationally. "Has been since takeoff. A maintenance error. A tiny crack in the wrong place. Growing now. Spreading. Physics is patient, but unforgiving." "Help!" Michael shouted, but his voice seemed muffled. "Someone help!" "They can't hear you, Michael. You're between moments now, between the before and the after." The window beside the man shattered inward. The decompression should have been explosive, catastrophic, but the glass simply vanished, replaced by howling sky. Wind that should have torn the cabin apart merely ruffled the man's silver hair. "This is your moment of clarity," the man said, his voice somehow perfectly audible above the screaming wind. "The moment you understand what's been coming for you across 97 flights." Michael's breath crystallized before his face. The temperature plummeted. Outside the broken window, clouds rushed past at impossible speeds. "Is this what my father saw?" Michael asked suddenly. "Before his stroke?" The man tilted his head, considering. "Your father cheated death twice in Vietnam. Probability noticed. It always does." "Please," Michael begged, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I have a wife, children." "Everyone has someone," the man replied, not unkindly. "Everyone has reasons to remain, but probability doesn't negotiate." The plane's structure groaned, a deep metallic protest that shook Michael's bones. The cabin lights flickered. "When will it happen?" Michael asked, his voice barely a whisper. The man checked his watch, an elegant timepiece with no numbers, only an infinite spiral where the face should be. "It already has." The world snapped back into focus. The empty seat was empty again, the window intact, the cabin quiet except for the white noise of engines. Michael gasped, sweat drenching his shirt despite the cabin's chill. A dream. Just a vivid, terrible dream. The lorazepam sometimes caused. The seatbelt sign dinged. The captain's voice came over the intercom, professionally calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." In the window beside the empty seat, the first hairline crack appeared. Michael screamed, but in the moment before catastrophe, he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him. A child cried somewhere in the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped from overhead compartments, dangling like pale jellyfish. The plane pitched sharply to the left, then right. The crack in the window expanded, branching like a lightning bolt across the plexiglass. "This isn't happening," Michael whispered, fumbling with his oxygen mask. "This can't be happening." "Oh, but it is," came the now familiar voice. Michael turned. The businessman sat beside him now, in his own seat, as if he'd been there all along. The oxygen mask hung untouched before the man's perfect face. "You don't need that, you know," the man said, gesturing to Michael's mask. "Not where you're going." The cabin lights failed. Emergency lighting bathed everything in blood red. A flight attendant fell hard against a seat as the plane lurched again, her practiced calm shattered by genuine fear. "Is everyone going to die?" Michael asked, strangely calm, now that the inevitable had arrived. "The whole plane?" The man studied him with those wrong eyes. "That depends." "On what?" "On you, Michael." The man leaned closer, his breath winter cold against Michael's ear. "Probability must be satisfied, but it can be selective." A violent shudder ran through the aircraft. Metal screamed. The floor beneath Michael's feet buckled. "What do you mean?" Michael asked, clinging to his armrests as the plane entered a steep dive. "Someone has drawn the short straw today," the man explained. But it doesn't have to be 178 someones. It could be just one. The implication hit Michael like a ton of bricks. You want me to choose who lives and who dies? I want you to accept what you've known since your father died, Michael. Some debts can't be outrun. Some odds catch up eventually. Michael thought of Waverly asking him to promise not to crash. Of Jack, too absorbed in his Legos to say a proper goodbye. Of Lydia, who had loved him through 11 years of his crippling fear. If I go willingly, Michael said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. Everyone else lives? The man's expression softened, the most human he'd looked since appearing. A noble offer, Michael Donovan. Balance would be restored. The plane's descent steepened. A woman screamed. A prayer was shouted in Japanese from somewhere behind them. How does it work? Michael asked. Take my hand, the man said, extending his palm. Accept what's been coming for 97 flights. The hand hung in the air between them, pale, perfectly manicured, terribly normal except for the unnatural cold that radiated from it. Michael hesitated, then thought of Waverly, of Jack, of all the strangers on this plane with their own Waverlys and Jacks waiting at home. Will it hurt? He asked. Less than the alternative, the man promised. Michael took the offered hand. Ice filled his veins, spreading from his fingertips up his arm, across his chest. The cabin dissolved around him, replaced by a vast starlit emptiness. Wind howled, but not the wind of high altitude. Something older, something that existed between worlds. Your father says hello, the man whispered, and then he too dissolved, leaving Michael alone in the endless dark. The Boeing 787 continued its flight to Tokyo, encountering nothing but a brief patch of turbulence. The maintenance crew would later find a hairline crack in the window of seat 14A. Not dangerous, but unusual. The passenger assigned to that seat was listed as a no-show for the flight, though his luggage would arrive unclaimed on the carousel in Narita. In Connecticut, Lydia Donovan would receive a call from the airline, apologizing that her husband had somehow been marked as boarded, when in fact he had never entered the plane. His phone, when located, would be found in the terminal at JFK, its screen shattered in a pattern like a lightning bolt. And Waverly Donovan, waking from a nightmare that night, would tell her mother through tears that she had dreamed of Daddy sitting next to a man with strange eyes, on a plane that was falling, until Daddy took the man's hand and disappeared. It's just a bad dream, sweetheart. Lydia would reassure her. Daddy missed his flight, that's all. He'll catch another one soon. But the seat beside Waverly's bed, the one that had been empty when she fell asleep, now contained a neatly folded airline blanket and a small, white pillow. If you enjoyed today's story and want to try the mental performance shot that's helping me stay focused during my research and storytelling, remember you can get 50% off Magic Mind at magicmind.com/CarmenEDU with code Carmen50. It's been a game changer for my creative process. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carmen's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carmen's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.